Hello and welcome to the Gear Knob. I am Alex, the Titicular Gear Knob, and today I will be discussing my thoughts on the Grand Tour Season 2, which has just concluded. Now, before I go any further, yes, I will be going back and talking more about Top Gear, the Grand Tour, and the past, present, future, etc. Both the classic incarnation with Clarkson, May, and Hammond, and the new, as it has been dubbed by much of the old fans, Joey Gear, featuring, of course, Matt LeBlanc, aka Joey from Friends. Anyway, let's start off with going over some of the changes from Season 1 to Season 2. Now, obviously, new network, new distribution medium. There's always going to be some growing pains, and they have really made an effort to remedy some of the growing pains this season, particularly two segments that were not well liked in the first one. Those were Celebrity Brain Crash and the American. Now, Celebrity Brain Crash was the replacement for Star in a Reasonably Priced Car in the old Top Gear. So the idea, as it was presented in the first episode of Season 1, was, of course, that they would have celebrities come in, interview them, and have them play a sort of arcade game that was supposedly based on reflex tests from the Royal Air Force. Now, the thing about this is that supposedly, originally, they were not allowed to actually do this because apparently keeping a score sheet was something they weren't allowed to do with the legal disputes between Amazon and the BBC and bringing in the new show and whatnot and having to differentiate from the past. So what they ended up doing was killing off the celebrities that were coming on, killing off in humorous fashions. Now, this was one of those things that first episode, it was very amusing, and I very much laughed when Jeremy Renner hit the ground after skydiving from a plane and Armie Hammer got bit by a snake. And it was funny, but it dragged after a while. It became just very predictable. A lot of the deaths weren't that clever, just didn't do that much after a while. I have a feeling that, like, if you were there, it would be a little more funny, but it didn't translate well to TV. Now, what came to light during the release of Season 2 over time is that apparently they actually built this arcade, and they were 100% planning on doing it the way they originally presented in the first episode, having celebrities come, interviewing them, and then having them play this game and test their skills. But what they realized while they were working on things and doing test footage and things, they realized that it just wasn't that much fun to watch people just kind of play a retro-style arcade game. And at the last minute, somebody on the production staff recommended, why don't we just kill the celebrities? It'll be funny. And, for one episode fix, it was very funny, but it dragged after a while doing it for a whole season, and I'm happy they replaced it. They replaced it with a new segment called Celebrity Face Off, which works instead of having one big leaderboard, you have a face-off between two celebrities going around a racetrack in a Jaguar F-Type. Ironic a little bit because the new Top Gear tried doing Rallycross, which is, British Rallycross is a mixed track of both tarmac and gravel, and it did not go over well. That was actually something they scrapped after their first revival season, and now the Grand Tour is doing essentially a rallycross segment, and people are liking it. And so instead of doing a big leaderboard, they're doing just comparing the two times, and they'll reference past times, but they don't show you an overall ranking anymore. So that was the fix for that. Some of them were good, some of them not. I've always generally the celebrity interviews are some of my least favorite parts of Grand Tour and Top Gear. But every once in a while, you get some that just have great chemistry with each other and or Clarkson. Um, the drummer interaction, Stuart Copeland from the Police and Nick, I don't remember his last name, uh, from the Pink Floyd, one of my favorite bands. I shouldn't have hesitated that long to say that. Um, were phenomenal. I always enjoy seeing interviews with Anthony Joshua, the boxer, and his kind of quiet confidence I thought played off fairly well to the bombastic wrestler that is Bill Goldberg. So there were some good things in that segment that came out of it. I think overall it was a pretty good replacement for Star in a reasonably priced car. But like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of Star in a reasonably priced car to begin with, so I didn't care that much. Now the other big change to the standard formatting was the replacement of the racing driver. In season one, it was the American, who, if you didn't watch season one for whatever reason, was Mike Skinner, the NASCAR driver, and skilled driver. As much as I hate watching NASCAR, I do admit those drivers tend to be very skilled. Requires a lot of endurance to do that kind of thing, and yeah, it was. But he was this generic American caricature, redneck American caricature, I should add. It was funny at first, but it got grating after a while. And once again, it was one of those things that funny at first, and fans didn't like him. And also, he didn't really, from what I understand, he didn't really enjoy what they did with his character either. Apparently, when he came on board, he tried to push the idea of his character evolving over time, of him starting to get a little more positive with some of the European cars and starting to see the light, as it were. But the production staff didn't really agree with that, and I think in retrospect that would have worked a lot better to see him evolve over time, but it was kind of too late. The fan base already hated him, so they moved on to the next thing. Of course, the production of this season was fraught with trial, as Richard Hammond, of course, was in the horrible accident with the Rimac Concept 1 electric supercar, which put him in the hospital, had to get his knee replaced, so on and so forth. And Jeremy Clarkson, of course, getting a apparently quite serious bout of pneumonia. And I think that there are, throughout the season, beyond just Richard being on crutches in a few episodes, throughout the season, there is the signs that there were these delays and some of the rushed production times and things. And I think one of the biggest indicators of that was the special of this season, which was, going to butcher the pronunciation of this, but took place in Mozambique, which is a small African nation, which has a very vibrant fishing culture on the coast, but given the lack of infrastructure, there is a lot of difficulty getting that protein source out into the more rural areas. So basically, they said, we're going to feed the world, and we're going to find a way to transport the fish the 200 miles from the coastline to the opposite side of the country. And they did this with Jeremy getting an old Nissan pickup truck, James getting an old Mercedes wagon, and Richard getting a brand new motorcycle, which he got for 800 pounds. And there were some great moments in that episode. But it lacked the grand scope of their best adventures. And my personal favorite episode of Top Gear is the Botswana adventure. Oliver! Oh, I thought that was wonderful. But, the Middle Eastern special, the Nile special, all of them have this grand scope as they travel usually over 1,000 miles through vibrant, gorgeous scenery. And while they did what they could with this, there were some great moments. I mean, James, his fish tank splashing over onto him. That was hilarious. But, Jeremy himself in the episode pointed it out. I never thought I'd see the day, but I'm actually getting tired of seeing Richard Hammond fall over on a motorbike. And I think that's true. I have the feeling that they had something grander planned for this that never really came to fruition because with all of the delays and the injury and illness, they couldn't put it out. So they with this season they did what they could with what they had, but there are little things all along the way that there are little bits that feel a little too stretched out. There are things that feel like maybe they weren't everything they could be. But all in all, I enjoyed this season. One thing that I feel like is the Jag episode could have been better. Traditionally, Cheap Car Challenges are some of my favorite episodes, but this one I think fell into the pitfall of we have this budget, we should use it. I think it would have been funnier if there was one backup car that they were sitting and watching, and it was like a Jag they hated, maybe an X-Type, which a lot of big-time car aficionados will note the X-Type isn't really a Jaguar. It's a Ford Fusion or Mondeo, depending on if you're in America or Europe. And so it has a pretty negative connotation around it. So I think they could have worked that in very well, and it would be more amusing to me, at least to me, to see them try to limp along these cars and try to cheat the challenges more instead of just swapping cars out. Only episode I really didn't like was the unscripted episode. Now, I very much understand why they script this show as much as they do. I know enough about... I don't know everything about it. I'm not an expert on it. But I know enough about production, and I've done enough improv and acting to know that you need to have a plan ahead of time. There were one thing that I did love was when they tried to go do an airfield to get them to a drag race, and I'm like, what the fuck? You can't do that with this short of a notice. So yeah, that was a nice little bit. But overall, that episode just felt so disjointed and that so clearly exaggerating its not so unscriptedness. It was... I didn't really like that episode. Other than that, positive season, some good stuff in there. Once again, another bit that I felt was a little bit too much. We have the budget, we need to use it, was the amphibious episodes. The only amphibious car episodes were fantastic. This one... It was a little unfortunate to me that they kind of grazed over the trials and tribulations. I would have liked to have seen a little more catastrophe, I guess you could say. But overall, it was a fun episode, and it was cool seeing them break a record like that. And bickering at the end, of course, and saying, well, we built a death trap and it failed. It was funny. All in all, I enjoyed this season. But it was... I give it about a 7.5 out of 10. So, there you go. Still experiencing some growing pains, but at the same time, love seeing those guys do what they do. Here's to many more years, guys. Hope that you continue on. Goodbye.